Hey everyone, how's it going? And oh boy, today is going to be a big one because I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite writers, Grant Morrison.
Getting a start writing a story for a comic magazine near Myth, Grant Morrison is one of the big comic legends of the industry today. Writing stories that embrace the goofy side of comics and blending it with mind-bending insanity and deep psychological and emotional analysis. With the greatest example being his run on Doom Patrol, starting from issue 19 to issue 63 in 1993.
Now, I can go on for hours talking about all the work Grant Morrison's done, like the Batman run, which is honestly my favorite, and the current stuff with Green Lantern, but for now, we're going to talk about what he did at Boom Studios with Klaus.
Published in 2015 by Boom Studios, Klaus tells the untold story of Santa Claus, or Santa Klaus as he's called in this series. I already covered the first book in Amateur Masters.
I'll leave a link in the description, but to summarize,
We meet Klaus, a medieval trapper who comes to a dreary old village that is run by a wicked lord who has cancelled the annual Yuletide, one of the many holidays that would lead to the modern day Christmas. And Klaus is determined to spread the spirit throughout the village. This would lead to one hell of a journey that would end with Klaus fighting the Krampus while the two ride sleds that are being pulled by magic flying wolves.
yes, really. Can you tell why I love these books?
If you love fantasy stories and swashbuckling adventures, it's definitely the book for you. As for the two sequels that were published together in this trade, well, let's get started talking about the story. The first one being The Witch of Winter. Warning, spoilers. We open to modern day Christmas, where a man has discovered that his children, Ben and Naomi, are missing, with the only clue being melted snow on the floor. He is then greeted by Klaus, who, after revealing that he's been on adventures on the moon, begins investigating. It turns out that the kids were kidnapped by the Witch of Winter, who, along with her servant, named Spoonlicker, has currently built an army of evil robotic snowmen that are made by the enslaved Geppetto,
Yes, that Geppetto.
who is Klaus's old apprentice. What do the kids have to do with this? How will Klaus save the day? And will the next story sound even more insane? Well, yes on that last one. As for the last two questions, well, you're going to have to read it to find out. The second story is called The Crisis in Xmasville.
And seriously, get ready for this insanity.
Taking place in 1985, we see a family heading to their grandmother's house for the holidays, but has to make a quick stop for gas and end up in a town of Xmasville, which is the home of Pola Cola.
Which is clearly not a reference to something.
The town is surrounded by guys in Santa costumes and are acting pretty odd. As the father is about to pay for the gas, the Santas grab him and it's revealed the town's inhabitants are being under some sort of mind control, with the older men being forced to wear Santa costumes and be the soldiers. The rest of the family get captured and the grandmother believes that something's up and calls Klaus. Yeah, she apparently is an old friend of Klaus from the 1930s. Klaus goes into the town where we meet our team of villains. First we have Partridge and his grandson, who both run the town and the Pola Cola Corporation. The Partridge family actually have a history with Klaus. He fought them back in 1931. The other antagonists and their partners, a group of aliens that, and I am seriously not kidding here, feed on the captured children's imagination and control the army of Santa Clauses. And how they feed on the imagination is that they smoke it like a hookah, with their plans being to conquer the world and Christmas. And to get rid of Klaus, they have created a clone of Klaus, but not just any clone. This clone is a vampire and a werewolf. Let me repeat, they made a clone that is a vampire and a werewolf, and this clone is a clone of Santa Claus.
My god, if I go any further, I'm just gonna geek out. So I'm just gonna stop here because this book here, the insanity and joy it gives me.
This story is amazing. I was a bit worried that it would lose some of its magic since they were moving from the medieval setting to modern day, but quite the contrary, it's actually maxed into overdrive and reminded me why I love Morrison's work. Next we got the character, starting with Klaus, who definitely goes through an interesting change. In the first book, he's kind of a combination of Robin Hood meets Conan the Barbarian, but here he's more of a combination of Superman and Batman, I mean, he has a Batman-esque lair. The combination makes sense to emulate the heroes of the period, and they do it while also keeping the essence of what made Klaus such a likable character in the first book. He's still kind, heroic, but also a bit cocky, which can get him into serious trouble, but also is now more wiser since, well, he's been alive for so long. As for Ben and Naomi, the children that were kidnapped in the first story, I guess you could argue they are the weakest part of the story since we don't really get to see too much of their character and can be played off more as just, the people that Klaus has to save, but we do get moments with them. It's pretty good, showing though that they're scared, particularly Naomi. She's still willing to stand up to the witch and protect her brother. Next we got Geppetto, and if Klaus is Batman, Geppetto is a combination of Jason Todd and Harold Allnut, with him being Klaus's apprentice and being believed dead like Jason, while also being a master builder and being manipulated by the main villain like Harold. He's a man who really suffers and finds himself trying to die very difficult since most of his body is now made of wood. Geppetto tries his best to atone for what he's done, which is handled pretty well since both these stories are pretty short. Spoonlicker is an interesting addition. He's actually part of the Yule Lads, who are kind of the precursor to Santa's elves, though they are seen as more mischievous and in some cases pretty creepy, especially since in some depictions they're known to eat the naughty children. Again, creepy, and Spoonlicker definitely sticks to that factor. He was once loyal to Klaus, but after some time grew mad and, well, yeah, he's all into tormenting people. Grant is writing him at this point in time. It makes me wonder of what he would be like in other stories, since if this series continues, it's safe to say that Grant would not have all the stories take place in a linear timeline. We would have different points in time, sometimes the past, sometimes the present, sometimes the future. Either way, I don't mind. As for Spoonlicker's boss, the Witch of Winter is a fascinating big bad. For the first story, she's obviously inspired by Hans Christian Andersen's story The Snow Queen, but even the story reveals that it's not just that. As Spoonlicker brings up at some point, she has gone by many names, some that we are aware of and some that we're not. In fact, her design is kind of resembling a combination of both Disney's original design for the Snow Queen before it was turned into Frozen, and how Jadis the White Witch looked when she was being played by Tilda Swinton in the Narnia films. Her personality at first starts out as the standard cold, ruthless, ice-themed villain, but as the story goes, we learn there is much more deeper elements for her character, which, oh boy, I am not spoiling that. As for the second story's villains, we'll start with Partridge, who is essentially the Lex Luthor in this Superman element of Klaus, though obviously way older. He's pretty demented, but also is no fool. He is fully aware of the evil Klaus and aliens most likely backstabbing him, and he seems to have a few backup plans if that ever happens. Throughout the story, he also shows that he's not long for this world, so we're now seeing a man who is desperate to vie for power before the end. As for how he treats the town, well, what's the best way to describe it? You know what? The best way to describe it? It's like Rapture, except way more enslavement and way more Christmassy. The aliens are pretty creepy as hell. I got Lovecraft vibes just by looking at them, especially when evil Klaus describes the world they came from. We don't really get to know them as individual characters, mostly as a group, especially since 1, the timing of the story, and 2, the language they speak is a made-up language that is never translated. But from what the artist did, well, yeah, just from the art alone, you can tell that they love huffing that child's imagination, and it is disturbing. As for the evil clone of Klaus, he is a beast. I mean, to repeat as I said before, he is also a vampire and a werewolf. He's demented and constantly craves battle and loves to play with his opponent. Now, with him being a clone, you'd think he'd be like Klaus's Bizarro to his Superman, but from his design and personality, and hell, instead of a sleigh, he has a giant rocket motorcycle, it's very clear this Basnitch was inspired by the main man himself, Lobo, and it is awesome. He's a great foe for Klaus, and he is probably one of the most entertaining villains in the story. The art was done by Dan Mora, who did the art for the first book, and as I said in the review I did on Amateur Master's channel, it's both whimsical but also dark and action-packed. How the colors are used in Crisis in Xmasville is also very interesting. It adds an element that is both nostalgic and captures elements of the Golden Age, which is pretty neat. This is a glorious book. It's so compelling, and it has us embrace a strange world with open arms, much like its predecessor. It's an absolute perfect book to read around the Christmas season.
Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you later.